right, welcome everyone. This is 11 Talents, the broadcast that's all about not just one talent or two talents or four talents or five talents or 10 talents, but 11 talents. That was the worst intro ever. I probably need to get something for that. But for those of you that don't know, this show is inspired by the parable of talents and how I noticed that the 5 talent servant was able to multiply what they had to 10 talents. And then after that, they were given the responsibility of handling what the 1 talent servant did not do. And so they were given the responsibility of that because their work prepared them for that. And so that notion of preparation is exactly what has inspired me to do these broadcasts and whatever we turn this into down the road as we go. But if you're catching this on the recording, welcome. Feel free to leave a comment in the comment section to say hi or just to ask me questions that I can follow up on later. But what I'm going to do today is talk about a somewhat sensitive topic because we are dealing with a lot of different things out there in the world right now. It is just it's just a crazy world, right? It's just a crazy, crazy world. And it just doesn't seem to be getting any better. And you know what? We weren't ever promised better. We weren't. That's just not something that we were promised as a planet, and certainly not as Christians. We were promised that there would be hard times. And so in a way, I just have to say, yeah, that's the way it's going to be. But on the other hand, I will say that there are some things that we should be aware of. And so don't take what I'm going to say today as anything other than business guidance. Obviously, it's not business advice that's anything close to what you're doing in your situation. But in what I'm reformulating and what I'm doing, there's reasons why I'm doing it. And so I thought I'd share some of these with you from the perspective of a person that's running a business that is also a Christian. Okay. So if you're running a business that also has a ministry aspect to it, this is going to be important for you as well. But largely, what I'm seeing out there is largely just centered around just it's been a progression of things that is not getting better. In fact, as I'm recording this, the big news today was, or maybe it was yesterday, that a bunch of Dr. Seuss books are no longer being sold, and it's because of what is being referred to as cancel culture. And so you might be asking yourself, what is cancel culture? Cancel culture is just kind of something that's been um, coined for this thing that's been going on lately of people wanting certain things removed from whatever historical you know works because they don't jive with current um, current things. So the thing I'll say about that is just right up front that we have to be very cautious with our other words. We have to be very much um, uh, not just cautious but wise with our words. And so that is something I'm going to attempt to do today. I'm going to attempt to do with my words today. But if I say something that offends, I don't know what to do for you. I think that's just something that is probably the first thing I probably want to talk about is what is being offended. And offended is something that one person has, but another person doesn't. This is something where someone is um, choosing to take offense. That is something that is a choice that person is making. Now, there's no such thing as universal things. We have to understand this, and this is what makes this notion of erasing things from our history or erasing things from even cartoons and things like that very confusing. And there's merit to both sides. What I think we have to be cautious of, though, is the retroactive nature of these things. And what I mean by that is that people can be offended at any point in time. And because of the nature of the internet, where what you put out there is there forever, this video, whether I like it or not, I could take it down and it'll still be somewhere. That's just the reality of this. And so I'm taking a risk even by doing this. But the reality is we have to recognize that, what we say can have impact down the road, but also what we say can and probably will be held against us down the road as well. And there's not really much we can do to prevent that, in my opinion. There is just always going to be someone that's going to take offense at something, and that has been accelerating. It's not slowing down. I see no signs of this changing. We can complain about it all we want. We can complain that it's a bad thing and that we shouldn't be doing cancel. We shouldn't be like um, supporting businesses that do the cancel culture thing. And I currently am kind of evaluating that myself, to be honest with you. But just remember this door swings both ways. That sometimes people will choose not to support you and your business for what you believe in. I was reminded of this pretty recently. I was in a professional networking group that I paid to be part of, and I won't say which one just yet. That's more for a private conversation. But um, I had put up that I was doing a fasting guide specifically for Christians who want to become entrepreneurs or want to start an entrepreneur journey or just to uh, start a new one. And so I put this up on a forum, not thinking that it was anything offensive, but because I had said the words Christian and business next to each other, this person chose to be not only offended by it, but chose to try and basically get me banned for what I was saying. And it was unfortunate. I felt really bad for this person taking so much of their day in this because as I look back to the history of that particular thread of events, I posted exactly two things. This person was, doing this several times throughout the day. It was just, it obviously become his mission to do this. And thing is, he brought up to me, or brought up in the thread, I should say, that there was precedent for his side of this, that I should not be so exclusive in what I was saying. I should be more inclusive. And what kind of scared me a little bit about it, to be honest with you, is he brought up the case in, I believe it was in Oregon. There was a some business owners that you know did not want to do a cake for a gay couple doing a wedding. Um, and uh, to the shock of no one these days, but to the shock of plenty then, it found that that they should have, I guess, done business. It still boggles my mind. I can't really fathom it that the state is literally told them that they need to do how to run their business basically. But that's exactly what happened. And it's so obviously a trap and things like that. So obvious. And so seeing something like that brought up, and in this case where it's just I was obviously being singled out and didn't know why. You know, I hadn't done anything that was, singling out anyone as, not being, you know, included. I was just saying that this is my target for this product. This is specifically who I'm writing this for. Doesn't mean nobody else can buy it. Doesn't mean nobody else can participate. It means that this is who I am thinking of when I do this. There's a big difference there. But this person chose to be offended by this and chose to take umbrage with this. And it reminded me of something that I want to bring up. All this week in my broadcasts, I'm talking about owning your own platform and how important it is to uh, deal with places like Facebook and YouTube, the places where I broadcast this, for example. or Instagram or any social media site, Twitter, all these different places as embassies. And this would include private places that I belong to as well. But we call them embassies because they are not places that we own. They are not places we can control what's said there. It's sort of like if I were to send an embassy to another country, that's not my home, but I'm sending someone there to speak for me. And so that is what we do with these embassies like Facebook and whatnot. So a lot of people have kind of a weird mindset about these things to where that first of all, I think they have rights, and that should be clear now that is not actually true. You do not have rights on someone else's platform. Um, they can just choose to, you know, pull the strings however they want to, and if you don't agree, it's not like you're paying for a specific, way of doing things, and so you're not paying for Facebook. You don't pay for any of these social media sites, not really. I mean, you're part of the product that helps them pay for it, but you aren't entering into any kind of contract where they are responsible to deliver anything to you. And so we need to remember that. Now, there's some other pieces of what's been happening in late 2020 and 2000 early 2021 that are very fascinating from a lot of perspectives with this. But the reality is, we just don't control these platforms. And one response is to just simply create platforms that just have less control. And I'm not going to get into this debate. I'm going to do that. And so like the Parlor and We Me and places like that I haven't been participating in. Um, I'll simply say this. It doesn't matter. If they are not, if you don't own that, then you can't control what they do with your information. And you can't really control how it's displayed to people. You can't control, how people will, take that or have it displayed to them. You can't actually control that. What you can control though is your own platform. And so I'm hearing a lot of um, colleagues of mine that are shocked to find that their ads on Facebook, for example, are no longer being allowed. And some of them even actually, more than four of my Christian friends that have businesses and, you know, interact on Facebook as a page and things like that, have had their sites, either removed completely, like their pages are gone, or they're just on kind of like that people call it Facebook jail, for example. Um, and no real explanations given, just that they've somehow violated the terms of service. And you dig into it, you find it was something that was said, years ago that, now is deemed somehow offensive or something like that, even though it's not, and it wasn't against the certain terms of service at the time for sure. Otherwise, yeah, whatever. But the reality is that it clearly shows that if somebody else is controlling the platform, they can, so and so deplatform you at any point. That is the reality we're dealing with. And the funny thing is, when I look back in like 2015 or so, whenever I read Michael Hyatt's Platform, which by the way is a fantastic book if you want to get into any kind of business that exists to teach people online or equip people online. Platform is kind of the definitive work to go to. But anyway, the long and short of it is, you shouldn't ever lean on those platforms. That's why we call them embassies. We're not leaning on them to conduct our business. We need to be doing that on our own site, our own terms, or in, like, for example, my case, I actually pay for several services specifically so that I can control what goes on there. So whether it's a group of folks that are a part of my membership, that is something where I control that platform. I don't have that on Facebook. I don't rely on Facebook for my business. I see a lot of people doing that right now, and I'm really scared for them. So this is why I wanted to do this broadcast today and have this discussion, is that I am genuinely concerned for a lot of people, Christian and not, honestly. Running your business on someone else's platform is a recipe for disaster that you don't know what's going to happen. It might happen today, it might happen, 2 years from now, it might never happen. But, the fact that, you know, people can go through your history. I mean, a lot of us have been on Facebook for more than 10 years, for example. It actually a lot more than 10 years in some of our cases, but the reality is that you don't have the ability to control that. So, let me just do a quick reset here because I think, oh, never mind. I see people popping in and out, so I never know when what's going on with that. If it's something that's a glitch or somebody who just you know here to see the kitten and not to listen to me and just got tired of listening to me apparently. But that's okay. I'm joking, of course. But just to level set a little bit for those that are just joining. Um, yeah, we're talking today about whether or not you should have control of your own platform and how not to rely on other media sites for that platform. So there's some other examples of this as well, um, that are more along the lines of what you share on platforms. Recently, I had an example of this that I didn't think was that big of a deal. I was sharing a blog post that I'd written a couple of years ago. Actually, if I recall, this post wasn't even necessarily something that I had done the heavy lifting on. I think I was just reviewing someone else's blog post. You know what? In fact, it was a Michael Hyatt post. Now that I'm thinking about it, and speaking of Michael Hyatt, so I was actually highlighting an article of his about how it's good to speak well of your spouse, and because I'd used the word spouse, there was I came back onto Twitter one day and found there was this discussion going on, um, that wasn't really asking me my opinion about it. It was everyone else sharing their opinion about it. That's something that happens on other people's platforms. You can't control that kind of conversation. The best I could probably do in that case would be to just remove the post. Um, but the the day's coming where that might not even be possible. Who knows? But the other point of this is that, um, yeah, the damage is done, right? The talk is already happening, and what what really made me concerned about it is how much of a villain I was made out to be for saying spouse instead of partner, or I guess, or whatever they wanted to say that. They found that offensive that I was saying spouse. Well, guess what? My wife finds it offensive if I say partner, and I do too. I'm not her partner. I'm her husband. There's a a a psychological difference to me. This is something where, you know, I have business partners that come and go, for example. That's something that we have. So my distinction, my language was suddenly put onto, you know, this discussion that was, yeah, very, very much negative towards me. In that regards, not directly towards me, but just saying, "Oh yeah, I don't think you should say spouse," and blah 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 blah. And the other thing I'll say about this is that that's international now. I've got people from different countries commenting on this, and so it's hard to know what to do in that sort of situation. And this is kind of why I say that it's important to not only own your own platform, because they can't go and like remove my blog post. They don't, they could complain to I don't know who, to do that, but it wouldn't be possible. But they could, if it was that offensive to them, which yeah, day's coming. Who knows? Uh, yeah, they could complain to the platform and have me removed from the platform. And this is what we're watching happen. So, as a person that's running a business, you need to be aware that what you say today may be fine. What you say today may not be fine 2 years from now. It just we don't know that anymore. We just don't know. I would have never thought the word spouse would be offensive. I wouldn't have thought that. That's not something that really occurred to me. So this is kind of the reality we're dealing with. And so just as entrepreneurs in general, this isn't even specific to Christians at this point, but especially for Christians, because when they find out you're a Christian, man, they will come out of the woodworks. They just seem to latch on to that. But and that's just the enemy's nature, right? But the thing we have to be aware of is that we don't want to lean on that. We don't want to lean on the ability to be heard. We don't want to lean on that. The other thing we need to realize is that um, we need to be ready to handle these situations and ready for that. So I'm actually thinking a lot about that and having a lot of discussions about this because, and I'm increasing my boldness, as you can tell, with things like this, because very soon I'll be doing some advertising for a event that I intend to do that will be targeted towards Christians who want to become entrepreneurs. The big thing with this that is kind of interesting to me is that you kind of get lambasted from both sides. You have those that just will just come at you just because you're a Christian, and so therefore you're excluding people, and then you should be taken down. It has nothing to do with the fact you're excluding people. It has everything to do with the fact that you're a Christian. This happens. We need to be ready for it. The other thing that comes with this too, though, is um, well, yeah, I don't want to say. I don't want to say that. I'm gonna back myself off there. Reminding myself, just live as you're watching, reminding myself that this is a public forum, not a private forum, and there's only so much I want to say about that. But the reality is that it 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 very much means you have to kind of take that advice that I realized with Ecclesiastes recently. It says, um, "Ship your grain across the seas. Invest in 7, even 8 ventures." So one of the things that tells me is that, if Facebook is your only strategy, for example, and you get deplatformed or put into Facebook jail on Facebook, and that affects your business, I've got news for you. That's not Facebook's fault. That's your fault. All right. I know that may not be easy to hear, and that may infuriate people. And this is kind of what uh, I am going to go and say it. Now, when it comes to the being a Christian in business, you get it from both sides. Sometimes you get it from the people that just upset at you for being a Christian, and then there's Christians that are upset with you for being in business. All right, there I said it. It happens. All right, but when it comes to something like that, if it's something where a platform has taken you off because of whatever reason, that's their decision. And you know what? If you are reliant on that, then that is your fault for relying completely on that. You've gone against that biblical guidance. So getting mad at other people or getting mad at God or whatever is completely inappropriate. You need to be diversifying. And so that's where, when it comes to things like having embassies, you want to have one that you focus on. Yes. You want to have one that you very much focus in on and have that relationship with people and use the most as far as that goes. But you don't want it to be the only one you have, period. You want to have that ability to have diversity. And when it comes to things like advertising, especially, it's actually a really good idea to spread yourself out a little bit, mostly because you're potentially reaching people that you aren't currently serving a lot of anyway. And so it actually makes a lot of sense just anyway. But my main message here is that you need to be in control of your own platform, whether that means a blog, whether that means just a site that you um, pay to have hosted in a specific way, that you pay for a service on, like Shopify or something like that. But be aware that even when you're doing that, you still can be taken down. I mean, other sites I've found this out to be true, and we just don't know what all the future is going to hold. Um, I personally am investing and doing a lot of research in some areas where it's just like unkillable platform, basically. It means that, right now I host my website with a service, right? So that means that if they find issue with my content for whatever reason, they could basically take me down. This is something that people have found out with like Amazon and places like that, that it is possible to be taken down. But the likelihood of that happening when you're paying to be part of a platform is very much, you have to really, really do something really awful or screw up really bad. Um, and this is where, there's some things. I mean, like I said, I don't want to debate back and forth about what happened with Parler, but it's something that ultimately it it was a wake up call, I think, for a lot of people. And we as Christians should be aware of this too. That you know it's like the example of the when Jesus was given the kind of the test, if you will, of paying taxes, and Jesus said, show me some of that coin. Show me that coin, boys." And they brought him a denarii, I think is what the actual coin was, and he's like, "Whose face and inscription is that?" And they said, "Caesar's." Well, says, "Oh, give to Caesar what's due to Caesar, and give to God what's due to God." That kind of guidance needs to be part of our business mindset. That we're not in this just to get everything we can, even if it's for the kingdom. We're not trying to stick it to the man, but at the same time, we've got to recognize that we've got to interact with the world, and that becomes an embassy in and of itself. But sometimes there's things that we're really dependent on that we just kind of taking a bit of a gamble, I guess you could say. So if it's you have a storefront and you're leasing that storefront, and the person that owns the building, or the company that owns the building, usually in those kind of cases, decides that they just don't like you, it's pretty hard for them to evict you. It's not a if you're not doing anything that breaks the law directly or breaks their your agreement with them, it's pretty hard for them to get you gone. It's not impossible, but it is harder, and it becomes kind of one of the things that say like the law of diminishing returns. If it's really hard to get you off of a platform, for example, or out of a building, then they're really gonna have to believe that you need to be gone to do that. So when it came to Parler, Amazon really had to think hard about, do we want to, you know, remove these people from our platform? Knowing that lawsuits were going to come. I mean, they had to know that, right? So that's one thing, but it's not an easy decision to make. Now, if you're on social media and some algorithm detects that you've used a word, it might just say, you know what, we're gonna put this person on notice or warning or whatever they choose to do. I mean, it might even be like what happened to a friend of mine where she suddenly found that she couldn't log into her account. She had no idea where it took her, I think, a week to figure out that some AI bot or something like that had been poring over her posts and had found something that I guess they used a keyword or something like that. I think it was a joke, honestly. And so her entire Facebook page got shut down. Well, that page also hosted a group, and so that group was also locked out. And so it's one of those things where it's like, it can be a pretty serious deal, So we need to be sure that we're not putting all our eggs in that basket, because we just never know, right? We just never know. So, but the point is that that's easy. That's if it's easy enough for like a bot to do that, and a human being was not involved in this decision, as far as we can tell, unless they were just kind of fibbing and saying that was, something else going on. But as far as I can tell, that's not the case. So we need to be careful. We need to be very much aware that things happen, and sometimes mistakes are made. There's been other stories of people that have, you know, just found they couldn't do certain things, just because a mistake was made, and it wasn't anything wrong. It's just that sometimes the bots don't get it quite right. It does happen. Um, yeah. eh, hopefully that's clear. If you have any questions or any comments or anything like that, go ahead and put them up there. If you're watching this live with me and have any questions or comments, those should pop up on my screen here and I can address them. But otherwise, I'll come back to them. Um, I'm not on Facebook all that often. YouTube, I do have it set to email me when somebody makes a comment, and so I will respond as soon as I can. But just know that it won't be right away if you're doing this after the fact. That's the benefit of catching me live. So, which, by the way, I should mention that I am actually working on a live schedule, and I was hoping that this time of day would be good. So I'm trying this out because I think next week my plan is to try a noon central time frame all next week and see how that goes. And then we might move that to more of like a 5 o'clock time frame like this down the road. But my hope is to get a consistent time frame of doing these broadcasts so that you can kind of, I don't want to say plan your day. Maybe you should plan your day around it. No, I'm kidding. But to know when it's coming. And so that's that. So again, if you're just joining me live, we are talking through some of the aspects of owning your own platform and what embassies look like and how to manage those appropriately. So I'm gonna keep talking unless anybody has any questions or comments. And also, there's a capability too. If you want to just join me up on the stage here, we can do that too. There's a capability I have of that. I didn't publish the link for that, obviously, because I didn't want any issues. But it's something now that we're live, I can actually um, bring that out to the forefront if it's something you're interested in. So just pop in the chat. You want to join me here, and we'll bring you up on the virtual stage here because that's something we can do. So when it comes to shipping your grain across the seas as a concept and making sure that you are dealing with multiple embassies for your platform. Um, I was talking about this yesterday. There's a temptation to do too much in too many different places, and that can cause some squirrel behavior, and it has in me for sure. But the thing I want you to know is that when it comes to there's probably a difference between doing like advertising and advocacy kind of things and participating. And I should probably clarify something I said yesterday that really is important. And it's really important to know that when I talk about having a single embassy that you're very much invested in, what I mean is invested in. Like, in other words, you are there to help people. If you are there just to get business, just make it an ad. Don't don't try and fake your way in. Don't be disingenuous and show up in conversations and offer to help and things like that when all you really want is business. That's not going to serve you in the end. You should really be there to help and serve. Now, there's a benefit to this, and that is that you learn the language of your people. You learn the things that they're going through and the struggles that they have. Honestly, that was actually the only reason we're having this conversation right now. And I did mention this yesterday. The only reason I'm having this conversation right now is because of watching what's been going on in some of the Facebook groups, for example, that I'm part of, and noticing that there's a few trends. And when it comes to being a Christian entrepreneur, these are not comfortable trends. When everyone in the group seems like they're talking about, how the universe is going to grant you something, that's kind of uncomfortable for a Christian to be part of that conversation. They really can't contribute to that conversation. So it's kind of ironic given what I was saying earlier in the broadcast about me being accused of not being inclusive, and yet I belong to all these groups where I don't feel very included in the conversation because it's gone to this weird spiritual thing that not everybody believes in. Sounds familiar, right? So anyway, the double standards aside, this is our reality, right? So the thing is, you want to learn the pain points and the pain points that aren't being expressed. So for me, I've realized that there is a pain point there, and this is something that when I brought this up to a few folks, they were ecstatic that I would even be willing to start doing this and to start having these conversations, because this is something where a lot of them feel afraid to, and a lot of them feel that like it's not their place. And so, one of the things that I've been looking at doing, and this is where I'll probably ask for feedback if it's something you would care to give, is starting a, a membership site. Basically, it would be just a place you would be a part of, and you're yeah, paying to be there. You know, it's not like I don't think this is gonna be necessarily a free thing. I think I want people that are, investing in themselves and investing in others, in a substantial way, not just with their time, but also, by funding the platform itself. But that just gave away what I was gonna say is like, I want this to be a platform that does not exist on Facebook. We might have Facebook as an embassy for this platform, but it's not gonna be where it lives. And so I am looking very seriously at that. So if you are interested in that, please let me know, even there in the comments or privately, and I will get you the information on where we're going with that when we actually launch it. I'm thinking if I can get enough interest, the time frame is likely to be April for that. There's things I got going on elsewhere that are taking precedent right now, but that's what I'm looking at. So if that's something that's interesting to you, let me know. But that again is an example of having a dedicated platform for a very good reason. That I want to have a place where it's very comfortable for Christians to be entrepreneurs and to talk business, talk the same kind of things, but to do so from a Christian perspective and not have all of the other things that don't jive with their values in that conversation. Or, and this is actually kind of worse, not feeling like they can share their opinions because they might offend someone that has a differing opinion as far as that goes, and that offense being enough to get them like kicked out or just have a bad day like I had. So that's the vision. Pardon me, I'm starting to dry out here. Not an endorsement, but it's pretty good sparkling water. I'm going through a modified fasting process right now, and so this is something where sparkling water has been my friend this week. So yeah. Speaking of fasting, if you didn't catch the description down below, I do have a link down there for the next. Oh, let me think about this. 32 days? No, that can't be right. Let's say 20 some odd days. We will be going through a guide that I'm putting together. So every day I'm releasing a chapter of this guide that I'm putting together that is intended for Christians who are wanting to know what's next in their work, whether that be entrepreneur work or whatever, that are feeling that call, that push to seek God on that. And so I'm helping them in fasting. And so what's unique about this is that over the years I've developed a few unique approaches to fasting, because people think of fasting in different ways. They think of, oh yeah, it's just going out into the wilderness and having no water for and no food for 40 days. That's what they think fasting is. Well, it turns out fasting, there's a lot of different ways to do it. And so my goal is to reduce the focus on suffering, make it bearable to do more with fasting and do this kind of a process that I've developed over the years that I'm sharing in this guide. Eventually, once I repair my platform and have these kind of vetted and edited, I do intend to put these out as blog posts, and then also release a physical printed journal kind of thing for this. And so look for that coming up. But if you want to be part of the initial development process and help me with wordings and give me feedback on the content itself, um, that link is there. Let me see if I can pull up the actual mm, words to say on that. That would be 11talents.co/fast book beta, and not fast as in it's going really fast, although it does feel like it's going really fast right now. Fast as in fasting. So 11talents.co/fastbook beta, and you can be part of that group. We are starting I think I forgot to put this on the description. Um, I do have a few um, Clubhouse. Another embassy is Clubhouse. Then I'm actually going to be doing some talks there too. So my intention is this Friday at, let me think about this. I believe 9 a.m. Let me make sure I get that right. I apologize. This Friday at noon, I'll be going live on Clubhouse, and so Clubhouse is an audio only app that's currently on Apple devices only. Hopefully, they get that to more of the population soon. But I think they're just kind of testing the waters a little bit, and so they're just doing it on that platform right now. So so that is another embassy that I'm going to be participating in, and so is a kind of a trial right now just to see how to get used to talking to people like that. And it's a bit of a time suck if you've ever been on Clubhouse. And so I've actually been actively avoiding it this week just because of doing so many other things and haven't wanted to get sucked too much into that. But at the same time, that is a embassy that I do intend to do a lot more with because I can have more direct conversations than I can have like this, Um, much as I'd love for people to just pop in and video chat, just because that's my kind of chosen medium doesn't mean everybody else's. So audio is more comfortable. You don't have to see my ugly mug, which is always a good thing. Kidding, I'm kidding, I'm kidding. I know I'm only partially atrocious. So anyway, anyway, that's another example of an embassy. So whenever I do a group like that, I'll have it up on a quick link that'll be 11talents.co/ch fasting. And so if you click on that, whenever I've scheduled one, I usually update that. Although I just realized I don't know if I actually updated that. I'll have to make sure I do that now that I've said that out loud. So maybe give me 20 minutes after the broadcast if you're joining me live to make sure you click. But anyway, it's 11talents.co/ch fasting for these discussions about fasting on Clubhouse. So yeah, that embassy is interesting. Embassies to avoid. It's another thing we could talk about. What platforms should you not be part of? And that answer is pretty simple. Don't be part of platforms that you don't like. And this is a hard thing for me because Twitter, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of reasons why I don't like Twitter. My experiences there are just one of them, but also just I don't personally like the way information flows on Twitter. I find it very not conducive to health, mentally, spiritually, or any other way. At the same time, I do post on Twitter. Now here's the secret, and this is true of multiple different embassies. Is I have a app that um, lives in the cloud and distributes posts. Um, not specifically at random. There's a method of the madness is like a schedule, but I have just a backlog of content, like a bunch of content that's all scheduled to post that goes at specific times to all these different embassies. And so things like Twitter, I only really this is just some tricks I've learned to do with this to make my posts have hashtags. So I just follow those hashtags, for example. That is kind of cool. That is a nice feature. But also just watching for notifications and things like that. But I leave the feed completely off of my Stream Deck or not Stream Deck, Tweet Deck. So I'm not even seeing them. So that's something to consider if you're on Twitter. I'm just all about the rhymes today. Consider on Twitter, you know. Yeah, whatever. Who knows who caught that? Who knows? But anyway, as far as that goes, it's really about managing that and managing that. But if you're not participating in that, it's harder to speak their language. And so when it comes to Twitter, Other than the occasional negative thing, I don't always get a lot of engagement. But for the tech audience that I serve, I do get a lot of uh, comments, likes, that sort of thing, even some retweets on occasion. But I don't get a lot, because I don't really invest in the platform. Generally speaking, if I was there every day and participating and having conversations, then I'd probably get a lot more engagement. And for a time, that was something that I was doing. But ultimately, I found that it wasn't really helping my heart, and it wasn't where I wanted to be. And so I decided to just basically automate my presence there. And so that's something to consider. But again, take that with the notion that that could be shut down anytime. That's not like that you own that. So even though you're participating, doesn't really get you any brownie points necessarily. In fact, I think that a lot of there's algorithms there that are very different than in like Facebook, for example, or YouTube, where your participation is judged differently. So much so that you can't post the same thing multiple times. You can retweet it, but you can't post the same thing multiple times. Otherwise, that's a kind of a strike kind of a thing. So very interesting how that works. But um, uh, yeah, there's always strategies to use these embassies for your benefit. But the ultimate thing is every time you use any kind of embassy like that, um, if your goal is to do more than serve, you need to have a call to action. That's another thing I'll say about this is that you need to call them back to your platform. So when I called you to 11talents.co, there's not much there right there. That's a blog that I'm going to be developing. But right now, I think it just says hello there, and that's it. But there's ways I can use that platform for these other methods, like getting you to some other platform. So when I called you to go to 11talents.co/fastbook beta, which I just realized looks a lot like Facebook beta, but it's a fast book beta. What I'm doing is I'm sending you to a site that it'll actually take you to a Mailchimp landing site to get onto uh, the list that I email every night. So that's what that looks like, right? So that is a use of a platform that a lot of people don't always think of. But because that's my domain name, 11talents.co, then I control what happens behind that. So I have things set up on WordPress to say, okay, if somebody comes to this address, direct them elsewhere, direct them to wherever else you're telling them to go. So that's the power of having your own platform, is that I can actually make that kind of as cool or silly sounding as I want to, but I don't have to give you a big long URL when I'm speaking at another embassy. And this is true of like even speaking engagements and things like that, where if you're up on stage, I can give it a URL that's easy enough for somebody to write down and go to later or just type out in their phone. But if I give them some big long thing like the entire uh, link for this broadcast, for example, yeah, it's a big long thing. I'm not going to do that from the stage, or I'm not going to do that from a podcast or something like that. As much as that is possible, it doesn't make it make sense. And so using your platform to make your audience's life a little easier is also a thing you can do. So keep that in mind. But it's also a way to actually get some metric data about that too. I didn't choose to in this case, but I can program things to say, okay, when someone's coming from they click on this link from Facebook, for example, they might have one link they click on. If they come from, a podcast episode, a different link they click on. And then I can see that in my reports and say, okay, this person clicked on this, or not this person, but this link got this many clicks. This link got this many clicks. This one's working better than this other one. Let's just do some more to to work with that and see if we can get even more out of that sort of thing. So there's things you can do on your platform that you don't always have the capability of doing on other people's platforms. Uh, I just saw Loki behind me stretching. Oh, so cute. Anyway, I hope this was helpful to you. Again, it was just kind of a random conversation. It wasn't really meant to be like a presentation. So thanks for hanging with me. If you have any comments or questions, nice comments or questions, I hope, um, please feel free to put them in the comments there, and I will come back around and answer them later. But for right now, I think this is good for our 11 talents hour, and we will call this good. And isn't God good? I tell you what, actually, I'll take the last few minutes here just to close out and say that um, this year is shaping up to be, in a lot of ways, very, very kind of scary, but at the same time, very much like things are aligning. Um, some easy ways and some not so easy ways in my life and my business and what I'm doing, and so it's going to be interesting to take you guys along for the ride here, and that's exactly what I intend to do, is to not only show you what I've learned. We're going to start having some other people on, specifically on the Squirrelpreneur stories and this show, the 11 Talents broadcast. We're going to start having guests on as well, so it's not just me talking. But that's all part of the journey this year, and so this is um, a fascinating direction. I'm really feeling blessed to be able to do this. I'm glad to have the kind of uh, capabilities to reach out into these multiple different embassies and talk to you all, and hopefully it remains like this for some time. I don't want to sound overly negative about all this. Yes, you need to be prepared, and yes, it could happen, but reality is right now, enjoy it while it's available, and connect with people and serve people and be in a relationship with people because we can, and because we can, we should. It's a gift. And so that's my encouragement as we leave today. In all things, I always want to see you leave the world better than you found it, and encourage others to do the same. And so that is my parting thought for you today, as most days. So, as I said, if you have any comments or questions, put those into the comments, and I will review those later and get back to you with any kind of answers, or we'll just answer the questions on a future show. But thanks for being with me here tonight, and have a great one. God bless.